Well, the president is putting his finishing touches on the State of the Union address for tomorrow night.
And today we're going to kick off this special series this week looking at the state of the economy, of national security, and much more. And we begin today with a look at the state of Obama's presidency. Republican strategist Kevin Madden is a former press secretary to Speaker John Boehner and also an advisor to the Republican frontrunner for president. Do we call him frontrunner? Or
No, frontrunner.
Oh, yeah? You don't want to be the frontrunner?
Don't get off on a tangent. Okay.
And of course, Anita Dunn was communications director for the White House and is still an unofficial advisor to the Obama White House. You both join us now. So, Anita, I'm going to start with you. 3 weeks ago, even, the conventional wisdom would have said the president is entering the State of the Union on the defensive. He's got to bow to a new political reality. Amazing what 3 weeks do. He suddenly is the guy going in and dictating the terms. Is that level of confidence, is that something that we're going to see tomorrow in the speech?
I think what you're going to see in the speech is a president who, having guided this country away from the worst financial crisis since the Depression, is going to answer the question that Americans want to know, which is what comes next, and, you know, how are Americans going to be number one in the world? How is this economy going to produce jobs? He's going to be out there with a positive message about how America can be number one, how we are number one, and what we need to do to make sure that our children have the future and the opportunities that is part of, you know, what America is all about. So it's going to be, I think you'll see a very positive, strong speech and a confident one.
And Kevin, if the president frames this as we expect him to, as these are areas where we can work together with Republicans and get specific about it, whether it's free trade agreements or certain business tax cuts, innovation tax cut, does he have Republicans right where he wants them? I mean, will they be able to meet him in the middle if he's moving more to the center? Or is it more in their interest to keep fighting him?
Well, look, I don't think he has them right where they wants them, because I think the most recent electoral judgment, the voice of the people that we heard, was a sort of rejection of the policies of the past and the actions that he took in the last 2 years. And I think what Republicans are going to look for, and I think the public too, and that's where we're more closely aligned with voters, is that they want to see action, not words. We all know that President Obama has mastered the pageantry and the rhetoric of trying to find common ground solutions and trying to find bipartisan solutions, but he hasn't really done it over the last 2 years, and his record speaks for himself in the electoral judgment that we just had in November. So Republicans, I feel, are going to require, they're going to trust but verify.
Kevin, I want to ask you, though, is there a political price to pay for looking like you're working too close to the president with some Republicans? Are there going to be some Republicans who feel, you know what, not as we begin the presidential election year, I'm not going to work too closely with them? Or what's the line?
It has to be common ground. I mean, I think if you find areas where the president wants to meet Republicans on spending, reducing spending, if the president wants to meet Republicans on areas that try to make the government more efficient and spur jobs and help spur the private sector and spur economic growth, then there's going to be, you know, I think that everybody will be rewarded in the end. And I think that's the interesting question for me, is whether the president can find that political salvation in the middle, because I think his party is going to still try and bring him left.
But I would disagree a little with Kevin, because the reality is that the Republicans were able for 2 years to get away with basically making it a referendum on the Democratic Party and the president, because they actually didn't have any responsibility for governing. And I think that there is going to be just as much pressure on the Republicans to show that they can work with the president. The president has, for 2 years, certainly tried to work with Republicans, and he is continuing to do so. I think if the Republicans take too intransigent a position, that the voters in this country are interested in leaders working together to create jobs and get this economy moving. And that's the standard. If they think the Republicans are trying to play political games, there is a big risk for them.
Well, real quickly, Anita, do you think the president has moved to the center? Has he made a mid-course correction, and what is it?
I think the president is moving from dealing with a crisis, which is what he inherited and what he has dealt with for 2 years, to a place where the economy slowly has gained some sort of stability. He's not changing, but what he is doing is what he has done throughout his career, which is to look for the best ideas from the Democrats, from the Republicans, and to bring people together to move this country forward. We're moving from the crisis to a period of competitiveness, innovation, and growth. And, you know, he will reach out to people of both parties. He's going to want to work with both parties. But at the end of the day, he's the president, and his leadership is what will move this country forward. He needs to bring people together. But that's what you saw during the lame duck, and that's what you're seeing now.
Are you going to see, Kevin, are we going to see a more aggressive, or, you know, the party sort of particularly House Republicans, had to tone it down over the last 2 weeks. Didn't really get fired up when they did the health care vote. They did what they had to do. We're going to see a more aggressive House Republican Party.
Well, I think we're aggressive about reining in the size of government. I think they're going to be aggressive about focusing again on a lot of the wasteful spending, and also I think they're going to be aggressive in drawing the contrast between the president and his party and Republicans, in that we don't think that massive federal spending is going to help spur economic growth, and instead we need to help the private sector and create the conditions for the private sector to create economic growth.
Real quick before we let you go, how do you explain the president's bump in the polls?
I think that you've seen a big move amongst independents, and I think that is something that's emblematic of just how volatile this electorate is. We saw 25-point swings on health care. We saw 25-point swings in independents from the Democrats to the Republicans. Republicans need to remember that we didn't necessarily get an electoral mandate, but that we have a great opportunity right now. Not yet.
By the way, is tomorrow, how much of tomorrow's speech is a pep rally? A pep talk to the American public? And I don't mean pep rally, I mean pep talk. It does sound like the president wants to give the American public a pep talk.
I think what the president wants to do is he wants to answer the question that the American public's been asking, which is, how do we get out of this and what's next? And how do we get there and what's it going to look like and how do we make a better future for our children? And I think what he's going to talk about tomorrow night is what brings Americans together, which is what's best about this country. So,
all right, Anita Dunn, we got to leave it there. Former communications director, sometime advisor to the White House, and Kevin Madden, Republican strategist, et cetera, et cetera. And we'll be right back.
front runner.